Okay, so let's talk about some of the things I did here with the object study with full value. Um, I sketched out the subject matter, which is the apple. First thing I did was start thinking about where my cast shadows and my shadow edges are, the darker areas of my subject matter. I still started with the 2B just because if you notice, like, hey, I went a little too dark, or I put that shadow in the wrong place, it feels like you can erase it or you're not as committed to it. Plus, starting out a little bit lighter allows you to blend a little bit easier. So I normally start with like a 2B or my 4B, sometimes add a little 6B, but it does tend to blend better if you kind of build your way up. But I start with the shadows first, keeping in mind where my highlight is so I can leave the white of the paper. I noticed as I was working that I had some reflective light kind of hitting back on the object, so kind of paying attention to that. You can always go back and lighten it a little bit, which I did at the end. This is known as kind of like a subtractive method, meaning if you've applied some of the graphite in a few places, you can take your eraser and pull it back up just a little bit. I try to leave the highlighted area in there because if you do get graphite in that spot, it's a little bit hard to completely get the white of the paper, so be aware of that. Not sure if my time-lapse video picked it up or not. I didn't have any wax paper or tracing paper, which is nice because you can lay a piece over top and see see your sketch behind it. And then I kind of pressed into the paper where I saw these little white dots on my subject matter. So that's kind of the nice thing, a drawing technique where you can take a sheet of wax paper and lay that over top and then apply some pressure to where you have some areas of pure white, for example, little white dots or white whiskers. And that way, when you're shading over top, because it's dented the paper, it'll resist that. But I didn't have any wax paper, so I tried it with a loose leaf thin paper, and I just couldn't see my subject matter. But you may or may not be able to tell there's some little white dots. So if I had a little more time, I probably would have added a little bit more of that. So that's kind of a nice drawing technique. Feel free to shade and add to the background. When we're thinking about edges of our subject matter, it's not that things are outlined in life, but it's more of we're seeing that edge because of the value. So I added a little bit of a gray tone as I kind of blended out my shadow. So feel free to do that if you want. It is okay to move around with the pencils, but it is normal to build up layers. That's how you're going to get things blended. It is okay to leave some of those hatch marks. As you can see, I noticed a texture as the value is wrapping outside, kind of this pattern on the outside of the apple. When I was blending, I used a little bit of a cross hatch technique. So these are all things that we've been learning, so feel free to add them to your drawing. So let's see how you do.